The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, says Cabinet is yet to deliberate and make a final decision on the closure of the Embassy of Israel. This despite the National Assembly passing a resolution for the closing down of the Israel Embassy 8 months ago.
The 6th Parliament resolved by 248 votes to close the Israel Embassy in South Africa, arguing that it's for the protection of human rights following the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The South African government later approached the International Court of Justice to consider whether Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. However, this resolution has not yet been implemented.
Status of the National Assembly resolution to shut down the Israeli embassy, Minister Ronald Lamola has provided an update by stating that Cabinet has yet to process the resolution and that the Department of International Relations and Cooperation will act on the instructions of Cabinet.
At least one political analyst says it's still likely to happen despite the country having a government of national unity. Some of the political parties that have formed the government of national unity voted against the closing down of the Israel embassy.
Campaign to stop the genocide in Palestine by Israel, the state of Israel, led by South Africa, has been successful internationally to the point where, by and large, it is only the United States that is preventing the two-state solution from being implemented and the end of hostilities in that region, specifically in the conflict between the Palestinians and the state of Israel. So now the idea of closing the embassy by the South African Parliament and the South African government here in South Africa, I think that it has been delayed by the idea that you put stick and carrot. You don't want to be seen to be extremely harsh, but it might still be in the cards.
Swana also believes that this decision might be influenced by the outcome of the U.S. election later this year if the concerned parties are not willing to compromise. Lula Mamatya, SABC News, Parliament.
Now, this resolution was adopted weeks before the government brought its case of genocide and related acts before the International Court of Justice on Israel. Since then, the International Court of Justice has issued multiple orders against Israel, instructing it, amongst others, to withdraw from Gaza. The International Court of Justice has also recently declared the occupation of Palestinian territories by Israel an unlawful occupation. Cabinet has not yet affected the resolution by Parliament and is yet to determine if the Israeli embassy will be closed down. Professor Dirk Kotze, political analyst, joins me to deconstruct this further. Prof, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. A lot has happened in the last 8 months, one would say. It may have been contentious then to ask the question, should the embassy be shut down, given that it's a very strong message about South Africa's diplomatic attitudes towards Israel. It's far less contentious now, given what has come out in the International Court of Justice over the last 8 months. Do you think that this would be a matter that would create division in Cabinet when it debates it?
Yes, I think there will be differences of opinion amongst the political parties there. There will also be, I think, differences within the ANC, because not all of them are exactly in favor of closure or withdrawing of diplomatic relations. I think what the resolution of Parliament actually implies is a temporary closure of the embassy there, or a withdrawal of the diplomats, because it was a resolution tabled by the EFF. And the ANC amended it, and the two components of the amendment were, first of all, that that closure will only be until the Israeli government agrees to a ceasefire, and secondly, that they will be willing to comply with the United Nations-led negotiation process. So once that is done, then strictly speaking, South Africa must open the embassy of the South African embassy in Israel again. So it's not the suggestion, or the resolution did not say it's a permanent closure. It is therefore part of this negotiation process. And I would say, if you look at these amendments by the ANC, then it means it's in a sense pushing Israel towards a resolution or a new approach to the situation in Gaza in general. But it's not completely cutting off of diplomatic relations for the long-term future or forever, until whenever they decide to resume relations again. So it's more complex than what it is presented in the public to be.
Yeah. Now, several ceasefire negotiations have taken place since November last year, two of which Israel entered into and then soon thereafter withdrew from it. And the full term of those ceasefires was not actualized, and at least the continuation of it was unsuccessfully negotiated. In one instance, Joe Biden attempted to negotiate a continuation of one ceasefire agreement that had been agreed to by the parties. Additionally to that, the government has brought a case before the ICJ, and again, after that order was adjudicated and given out, the government went back to the ICJ and had sought to bring contempt charges against Israel for not adhering to the provisional orders given by the International Court of Justice. Does these facts, including the fact that the Israeli government has now been declared by the International Court of Justice as an unlawfully occupying Palestinian territories, do these set of facts that has occurred in the last 8 months since that parliamentary resolution give a new impetus on government, especially on the ANC representative in governments, to push further for the closure of Israeli embassy here and the severance of relationships with Israel?
Well, that is the one part of the argument, certainly. That is certainly the way in which it can be or will be understood. The other part is that South Africa always wanted to be involved in a negotiation process between Israel and the Palestinians. And if you close the diplomatic relations, or stop the diplomatic relations, then that process will become much more difficult. South Africa is one of the very few countries in the world, states in the world, that have diplomatic relations with both the Palestinian Authority as well as the State of Israel. And that gives South Africa the opportunity to apply the diplomatic approach, the negotiation approach, the conflict resolution approach that President Ramaphosa has introduced, but that was also used by former presidents to a large extent. And I think these are some of the aspects that will be considered by the cabinet when they take a decision on this, whether it will have an impact on their participation in it. We see that President Ramaphosa has adopted a similar approach to the war in the Ukraine. And in that respect, I think South Africa's foreign policy, one of its key components of the foreign policy is how to promote, how to facilitate peace building and peace-making processes across the world. And I think the situation in Israel is, despite what we think, that it has become very desperate, and that is indeed so, that the South African government hasn't given up on that policy principle that they want to apply.
Yeah. Prof. Kotze, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.